The gate agent froze, her eyes darting nervously between the tall, imposing pilot and the woman standing quietly in a hoodie and jeans. Captain Mark Anderson didn't just block the boarding ramp. He physically planted himself in the way, crossing his arms with a sneer that silenced the entire waiting area. "Listen to me clearly," he barked, pointing a finger in her face. "First class is for people who matter. I don't know how you got that ticket, but on my plane, we don't let people like you sit up front." He thought he was protecting his airline's image. He had no idea he was speaking to the woman who had just bought it. The fluorescent lights of JFK's Terminal 4 hummed with the manic energy of a Friday afternoon. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, rain lashed against the glass, blurring the tails of the massive jets waiting on the tarmac. But inside, the air was thick with the smell of stale coffee, expensive perfume, and mounting anxiety. Monique Sterling adjusted the strap of her battered leather weekender bag. It was an old bag, scuffed at the corners, the kind that spoke of utility rather than status. She wore a charcoal grey hoodie, slightly oversized, and a pair of comfortable denim jeans that had seen better days. To the casual observer, and there were hundreds of them rushing past her, she looked like a tired student heading home for the holidays, or perhaps a weary mother traveling alone. She certainly didn't look like the owner of a 9-figure portfolio, nor did she look like the newly appointed CEO of Horizon Air, the very airline whose logo was currently displayed on the massive LCD screens above Gate B12. Monique took a deep breath. This was her first week. The board had approved her appointment in a closed-door meeting 72 hours ago. The press release wasn't scheduled to drop until Monday morning. She had specifically requested this delay. She wanted one weekend, just one, to fly her new airline as a ghost. She wanted to see the cracks in the foundation before the employees started polishing the floors for the boss. She checked her boarding pass on her phone. Seat 1A, first class. She had purchased it under her maiden name, Monique Johnson, to avoid flagging the system. Priority boarding for first class and Diamond Medallion members is now beginning, the gate agent announced, her voice cracking slightly over the intercom. Monique stepped forward. The carpet leading to the priority lane was plush, a stark crimson, meant to separate the elite from the economy. As she stepped onto the red carpet, a shadow loomed over her. It wasn't a fellow passenger. It was a pilot. Captain Mark Anderson was a man who took up space. He stood 6'2", his uniform pressed to military precision, the 4 gold stripes on his epaulets gleaming under the terminal lights. He had the jawline of a soap opera star and the eyes of a shark. He was leaning against the podium, chatting up a junior flight attendant who looked like she was trying to find a polite way to escape the conversation when he saw Monique. His laughter died instantly. Monique didn't notice him at first. She was focused on the QR code scanner. She moved to scan her phone, but a large, manicured hand slammed down over the scanner's glass surface. Monique flinched, pulling her phone back. She looked up, startled, straight into the ice-blue eyes of Captain Anderson. "Excuse me," Monique said, her voice calm but confused. "You're in the wrong line, sweetheart," Anderson said. His voice was a rich baritone, the kind that usually reassured passengers that the turbulence was nothing to worry about. But right now, it was dripping with condescension. He didn't even look at her face. His eyes did a slow, deliberate sweep of her hoodie, her jeans, and finally, her scuffed boots. "This is the priority lane," Anderson continued, pointing a thumb over his shoulder toward the snaking line of frustrated passengers in the economy queue. "Group 4 and 5 are over there. You wait until they call your section." Monique straightened her posture. She was 5'6", significantly shorter than him, but she held herself with a stillness that usually made boardrooms go quiet. I'm aware of where I am, Captain, she said softly. I have a first-class ticket. I'm in the correct line. Anderson let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. He turned to the gate agent, a young woman named Sarah, whose name tag was slightly crooked. Sarah, check this. Apparently we're letting anyone wander into the priority lane today. Sarah looked terrified. She typed rapidly on her keyboard, avoiding eye contact with Monique. Captain, I can check her pass. No need. Anderson interrupted, stepping fully in front of the scanner, effectively blocking Monique's path to the jet bridge. I've been flying for 20 years. I know a first-class passenger when I see one, and I know a non-rev or an economy upgrade scam when I see one. He leaned in closer to Monique, invading her personal space. The smell of strong mints and stale tobacco clung to him. Let me guess. You found a screenshot of a boarding pass online? Or maybe you're related to a baggage handler and think that gets you the red carpet treatment? I bought my ticket, Monique said, her voice hardening. Just like everyone else. Now please remove your hand from the scanner so I can board. You are holding up the line. Behind Monique, a businessman in a tailored suit cleared his throat loudly, checking his Rolex. The tension in the air spiked. People were watching. Phones were starting to come out of pockets. Anderson didn't move. If anything, he seemed to feed off the audience. He crossed his arms. I'm the captain of this aircraft. That means I'm the final authority on who gets on and who doesn't. And I'm telling you, you aren't getting on my plane looking like that. Looking like what? Monique asked. The question hung in the air, heavy and dangerous. Anderson smirked, like you don't belong here. The terminal went quiet. The ambient noise of rolling suitcases and distant announcements seemed to fade away, leaving only the sharp, electric tension between the captain and the woman in the hoodie. Monique felt a familiar heat rising in her chest. Not anger exactly, but a focused, burning disappointment. She had read the reports. Horizon Air had a diversity problem. They had a customer service problem. But reading about it in a spreadsheet was one thing. Having a man with gold stripes block her path because of her skin color and her clothes was a visceral reality she hadn't prepared for today. Captain Anderson, is it? Monique read his name tag, her eyes narrowing. You are making a mistake. A very expensive mistake. Anderson's face turned a shade of red that clashed with the crimson carpet. He wasn't used to being challenged, certainly not by women dressed like Monique. He was the king of the cockpit, a man who had spent 2 decades having his coffee stirred for him, and his jokes laughed at by subordinates who feared for their schedules. Is that a threat? Anderson stepped forward, forcing Monique to take a half step back to maintain her balance. Did you just threaten a flight officer? Sarah! He snapped his fingers at the gate agent without looking at her. Call security. Now. I want this woman removed from the gate area. Sir, Sarah squeaked, her hands trembling over the keyboard. I just scanned her name in the system manually. It says here she is 1A. It's a full fare ticket, Captain. It's valid. Anderson spun around on the poor girl. I don't care what the computer says, Sarah. Computers glitch. People hack systems. Look at her. He gestured wildly at Monique. Does she look like she paid $3,000 for a seat? She's probably a drug mule or running some credit card scam. I am not having her in my cabin, disturbing my high-value customers. I am a high-value customer, Monique said, her voice rising just enough to be heard by the crowd gathering behind the velvet ropes. And your behavior is the only disturbance happening here. Listen here, Anderson hissed, pointing a finger inches from her nose. I don't know who you think you are, but you are not getting on Flight 4922. I have the right to deny boarding to anyone who poses a security risk or exhibits disorderly conduct, and right now, your attitude is disorderly." "My attitude?" Monique scoffed, a dry, humorless sound. "I haven't raised my voice. I haven't cursed. I have presented a valid ticket. You are profiling me, Captain, plain and simple." "Profiling?" Anderson laughed, playing to the crowd. "Oh, here we go. The victim card. I knew it." He turned to the businessman behind Monique, seeking an ally. "Can you believe this? I'm trying to keep this flight safe and classy, and I get accused of discrimination." The businessman, a man in his 50s with silver hair, didn't smile. He looked from Anderson to Monique, then stepped forward. "Actually, Captain," the man said, his voice crisp and British, "she's right. She hasn't done anything. You're the one making a scene. I'd like to board, and I'd like her to board ahead of me, as is her right." Anderson's jaw tightened. He looked betrayed. "Stay out of this, sir. This is a security matter now." 2 TSA officers and a private airport security guard were making their way through the crowd, their radios crackling. Anderson saw them and straightened up, smoothing his tie, instantly switching into his authoritative hero persona. "Over here," Anderson called out, waving them down. "We have a non-compliant passenger refusing to leave the gate area and threatening the flight crew." Monique watched the officers approach. She didn't run. She didn't scream. She reached into her pocket. "Hands where I can see them!" Anderson shouted, flinching back as if she were pulling a weapon. Monique slowly withdrew her hand, revealing nothing but a sleek, black smartphone. "I'm calling corporate," she said calmly. "Go ahead," Anderson jeered. "Call the complaint hotline. You'll be on hold for 3 hours, and by the time you get through to some call center in the Philippines, we'll be at 30,000 feet. You aren't flying today, lady. Get that through your head." The lead security officer, a burly man named Officer Davis, stepped into the circle. He looked tired. "What's the problem here, Captain?" "She's refusing to follow crew instructions," Anderson lied smoothly. "I suspect a fraudulent ticket. She became aggressive when I asked for verification. I want her escorted out of the terminal." Officer Davis turned to Monique. He looked her up and down, his expression unreadable. "Ma'am, is this true?" "It is categorically false," Monique said, holding her ground. "I have a valid ticket. The gate agent confirmed it. The captain is refusing me boarding based on my appearance. I would like you to ask the gate agent, Sarah, to verify my ticket right now in front of you." Davis looked at Sarah. "Miss?" Sarah looked like she wanted to melt into the floor. She looked at the furious Captain Anderson, who was glaring at her with a look that screamed, "Say the wrong thing and you're fired!" And then at Monique, who looked calm, but intense. Sarah stammered. "The system says, the ticket is valid, officer, but the captain has the final say on safety." Anderson smirked triumphantly. "See? Safety. She's a risk. Remove her." Officer Davis sighed. He pulled a pair of handcuffs from his belt, not to arrest her, but to signal he was serious. "Ma'am, if the captain says you can't fly, you can't fly. You need to come with us to the security desk to sort this out. If you resist, we will have to detain you for trespassing." Monique looked at the handcuffs, then at the gathered crowd filming on their phones. She realized this was the moment. She could reveal who she was right now. She could pull out her badge, drop the bomb, and watch Anderson crumble. But she didn't want him to just crumble. She wanted to see how deep the rot went. She wanted to see if anyone in the entire chain of command would do the right thing before she played her ace. "I will come with you," Monique said, her voice icy. "But I'm not leaving this gate area until I make one phone call. And Captain?" She looked Anderson dead in the eye. "You better hope this flight leaves on time, because you're going to need every second of your schedule to explain this later. Get her out of here, Anderson scoffed, turning his back on her to scan his own badge and open the jet bridge door. I've got a plane to fly. Monique stood near the uncomfortable metal chairs of the waiting area, flanked by Officer Davis and his partner. The crowd had not dispersed. If anything, it had grown. The human instinct for drama was magnetic. People from adjacent gates were craning their necks, sensing that the confrontation wasn't over. "Ma'am, you need to put the phone away and come with us," Officer Davis said, though his voice lacked the earlier edge. Something about the way this woman stood, feet planted, chin high, utterly unafraid, was tripping his internal alarm bells. He had arrested hundreds of unruly passengers. They usually screamed, cried, or threw things. They didn't stand with the terrifying calm of a judge delivering a sentence. "I am not resisting, officer," Monique said, her thumb hovering over a contact on her screen labeled D. Thorne, VP Ops. "But as a ticket-holding passenger who has been accused of a crime, I am exercising my right to contact my attorney, or in this case, the person who can clear this up in 30 seconds. "You have 1 minute, Davis grunted, checking his watch. "Then we walk." Monique tapped the screen. She put the phone to her ear, turning her back slightly to the gate where the last few passengers were boarding. The jet bridge door was still open, a gaping mouth swallowing the people Captain Anderson deemed worthy. The phone rang twice. "This is David," a clipped, efficient voice answered. David Thorne, the Vice President of Operations for Horizon Air, was a man who lived on caffeine and stress. He was currently in Chicago, likely staring at a weather map. "David, it's Monique." There was a pause. The tone on the other end shifted instantly from busy executive to deferential subordinate. "Monique, I wasn't expecting to hear from you until Monday. Is everything all right? Are you in the air?" "No, David, I am not in the air. I am currently standing at gate B12 at JFK, being threatened with arrest for trespassing." "Excuse me?" David's voice dropped an octave. "Did you say arrest?" "I'm trying to board Flight 492 to London," Monique continued, her voice level but carrying a razor-sharp edge. "The captain, a Mark Anderson, physically blocked me from the scanner. He told me that people like me don't belong in first class. He has accused me of fraud and ordered security to remove me from the terminal." Silence stretched over the line. It was the heavy silence of a man realizing his career might end if he said the wrong thing. Monique could hear the background noise of the Chicago office, phones ringing, faint chatter, all oblivious to the bomb she had just dropped. He refused you boarding? Does he know who you are?" "No," Monique said, "and I don't want him to know." "Not yet. I want you to see exactly how he handles this when he thinks I'm just a nobody in a hoodie. Monique, I can have the station manager there in 5 minutes. I can have Anderson pulled from the cockpit immediately. I'll fire him over the phone right now." "No," Monique commanded. "Do not fire him yet. If you pull him now, he'll claim he was just following protocol and I was being difficult. He'll become a martyr for safety. I want him to come out here and say it again. I want him to double down. I want there to be absolutely no ambiguity about why I was denied this seat." She glanced at Sarah, the gate agent, who was currently staring at her computer screen with a look of pure misery. "Here is what you are going to do, David," Monique said. "Call the tower. Call the gate. Put a ground hold on Flight 492. Do not let that plane push back. Tell the gate agent that there is a load discrepancy that must be resolved by the captain personally. Force Anderson to come back up the jet bridge." "Monique, that will delay the flight. It costs thousands of dollars a minute. I own the airline, David." She cut him off. "I'll pay the fine. Just freeze the plane." "Done," David said, the sound of keyboard typing furious in the background. "I'm calling the JFK station manager, Paul Henderson. He's on his way to you now. Monique!" "I'm so sorry." "Don't be sorry, David. Be watching." Monique hung up. She turned back to Officer Davis. He reached for her arm. "Time's up, Mum. Let's go." "Actually," Monique said, planting her feet, "we aren't going anywhere. You might want to wait for the call your dispatcher is about to get." Davis frowned, confused. "What are you talking about?" Before he could answer, the radio on his shoulder crackled to life. "Dispatch to Unit 4 Alpha at Gate B12. "Go ahead, dispatch," Davis said, eyeing Monique suspiciously. "Hold position. Do not, I repeat, do not remove the subject. Station Manager Henderson is en route to your location. Priority 1. Await his arrival." Davis blinked. He looked at his partner, then at Monique. The woman in the hoodie hadn't called a lawyer. She hadn't called a boyfriend. She had made one phone call that stopped airport security protocol dead in its tracks. Monique simply crossed her arms and looked at the closed door of the jet bridge. "He'll be coming out any minute," she whispered to herself. Inside the cockpit of the Boeing 711, the atmosphere was jovial. Captain Mark Anderson was settling into the left seat, adjusting the lumbar support. He felt energized. There was nothing quite like putting someone in their place to get the adrenaline flowing before a transatlantic crossing. Next to him, First Officer Kevin Miller was running through the pre-flight checklist on his iPad. Kevin was 28, new to the fleet, and still terrified of Anderson. He had seen the altercation at the gate through the open cockpit door, but he hadn't dared to speak. Anderson was a Czech airman, a pilot who had the power to fail other pilots during evaluations. Crossing him was career suicide. "Did you see that?" Anderson chuckled, flipping switches on the overhead panel. "Unbelievable. The nerve of some people. Walking into the priority lane like she owns the place." "Yeah," Kevin mumbled, keeping his eyes on the fuel gauges. She seemed pretty insistent, Captain." "They always are," Anderson dismissed, waving a hand. "It's a scam, Kevin. Oldest trick in the book. They buy a stolen ticket online, or they try to bully the gate agent into an upgrade. If you let one slip through, suddenly the whole cabin loses its integrity. We sell an experience, Kevin. Luxury, exclusivity. You can't have someone looking like a homeless teenager sitting next to a CEO in 1A. "Right," Kevin said, though his stomach churned. He had noticed the woman's shoes. They were scuffed, yes, but they were Balenciaga. He recognized them because his girlfriend had been saving up for a pair for 2 years. But pointing that out to Anderson didn't seem like a wise move. "Flight attendants, prepare for cross-check," the purser's voice came over the interphone. The doors were closed, the bridge was retracting. Anderson grabbed the radio handset. "Kennedy ground, Horizon 492, ready to push back, Gate Bravo 12. He waited for the clearance. Usually it was immediate, static. Then a voice from the tower, sounding confused. "Horizon 492, hold position. Pushback clearance is denied." Anderson frowned. "Kennedy ground? Say again. We are buttoned up and on time." "Horizon 492, we have a company stop order on your flight. You are to hold at the gate. Do not disconnect ground power. Contact your dispatch immediately." Anderson's face went red. "Company stop? What the hell?" He slammed the handset into the cradle. "Dispatch. Why is dispatch holding us?" He keyed the mic for the company frequency. "Operations, this is 492. Why are we holding? We have a slot to hit." The voice that came back wasn't the usual dispatcher. It was the calm, terrified voice of the local ground controller. "Captain Anderson, we have a direct order from HQ. You need to open the main cabin door. There is an unresolved passenger issue." "I resolved the passenger issue," Anderson shouted, spit flying onto the instrument panel. "She's off the plane. We are closed." "Sir, the order is mandatory. You are to open the door and proceed to the gate podium immediately to speak with the station manager." Anderson ripped his headset off and threw it onto the dashboard. "Unbelievable! Incompetent bureaucrats!" He unbuckled his harness aggressively. "Kevin, keep the APU running. I'm going to go out there, scream at someone until their ears bleed, and then we are leaving." He stormed out of the cockpit, pushing past the startled flight attendants in the galley. "Open the door," he barked at the purser. "But Captain, the slide is armed." "Disarm it and open it. Now." The purser scrambled to comply. The heavy door groaned and swung open, revealing the jet bridge. Anderson marched up the ramp, his footsteps heavy and angry. He was rehearsing his speech. He was going to file a grievance. He was going to have that gate agent fired. He was going to have that woman banned from the airline for life. He burst out of the jet bridge door and into the gate area. "Who is responsible for this?" Anderson bellowed, his voice echoing off the glass walls. "I have 300 people waiting to—" He stopped. The scene before him was not what he expected. The woman, the one in the hoodie, was still there. She hadn't been dragged away in handcuffs. She was standing exactly where he had left her, looking at him with an expression of terrifying serenity. But what stopped Anderson was the man running toward them. Paul Henderson, the JFK station manager for Horizon Air, was a man Anderson knew well. Paul was a stickler for rules, a man who usually bowed down to pilots. But right now, Paul looked pale, sweating profusely in his cheap suit. And Paul wasn't looking at Anderson. He was looking at the woman. "Ms. Sterling," Paul Henderson gasped, skidding to a halt in front of Monique. He ignored the captain entirely. "Ms. Sterling, I got here as fast as I could. I am mortified. Truly." Anderson blinked. "Paul, what are you doing? Tell these security guards to remove this woman so I can fly my plane." Paul Henderson spun around, and for the first time in 10 years, he looked at Captain Anderson with something other than respect. He looked at him with pity. "Captain Anderson, be quiet," Paul snapped. Anderson recoiled as if slapped. "Excuse me?" "I said be quiet," Paul hissed. He turned back to Monique, his hands shaking. "Ms. Sterling, please, let me escort you to the lounge. We can sort this out. I can get you on the next flight, or I can upgrade you to a private charter." "No, Mr. Henderson," Monique said. Her voice was not loud, but it carried the weight of a gavel. "I don't want a lounge. I want my seat. Seat 1A, the one I paid for." She turned her gaze slowly to Captain Anderson. "But it seems the captain is confused about my eligibility to sit there." Anderson looked from Paul to Monique. His brain was trying to connect the dots, but his ego was blocking the signal. "Sterling?" he muttered. "Who is—" Then it hit him. The memo, the company-wide email sent out 3 days ago. New CEO appointed. Monique Sterling. Former VP of Logistics at Amazon. A visionary leader. He hadn't read it. He had deleted it without opening it, just like he did with all corporate spam. But he had seen the thumbnail picture on the news in the crew lounge, a headshot of a woman with braided hair and a sharp blazer. He looked at the woman in the hoodie. The face was the same. The blood drained from Anderson's face so fast it left him dizzy. His knees actually buckled slightly. "You," Anderson whispered. "Me?" Monique said. She took a step toward him. "I'm the non-rev. I'm the fraud. I'm the one who doesn't belong." She let the silence stretch, agonizing and brutal. The passengers watching were now recording everything. This was going viral before the plane even took off. "Tell me, Captain," Monique asked, tilting her head. "Does the CEO of Horizon Air belong in first class? Or do I need to go change into a suit so you can respect me?" Anderson opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked at Officer Davis, who was now smirking. He looked at Sarah, the gate agent, who was covering a smile with her hand. He was alone. I didn't know," Anderson stammered, his voice a dry rasp. "Ma'am, I was just following security protocols. You have to understand. We have to be vigilant." "Security protocols," Monique cut him off. "I wrote the security protocols for my previous company, Captain. Nowhere in the manual does it say to judge a passenger's net worth by their sweatshirt. You weren't profiling for safety. You were profiling for your own ego." She turned to Paul Henderson. "Paul, is the flight ready?" "Yes, Ms. Sterling. Absolutely." "Good." Monique picked up her battered leather bag. She walked past Anderson, close enough that he had to step aside or be run over. She stopped right at the scanner, where this had all begun. She looked back at Anderson. He looked like a man watching his house burn down. "Well, Captain," Monique said, "are you going to fly the plane? Or are you going to keep standing there explaining to the board of directors why you made the CEO late for her own inauguration?" The walk down the jet bridge was the longest journey of Monique Sterling's life, not because of the distance, but because of the weight of the silence. She didn't walk with a swagger. That was Anderson's style. She walked with efficiency. She was a woman who knew that every minute of a delayed flight cost the airline approximately $400 in fuel, crew time, and missed connections. She wasn't savoring the victory. She was calculating the damage. As she stepped onto the aircraft, the atmosphere shifted. The flight attendants, who had been peering out of the galley window, suddenly snapped to attention. They didn't know exactly who she was yet. The news traveled fast, but not instantly. But they knew she was the woman who had just made Captain Anderson look like a frightened child. That alone commanded a level of reverence usually reserved for royalty. "Welcome aboard, ma'am," the purser said. Her name tag read Elena. She was shaking slightly as she checked Monique's boarding pass. "Seat 1A, to your left." "Thank you, Elena," Monique said, offering a warm, genuine smile that seemed to confuse the terrified flight attendant. "And please, don't worry about the delay. We'll make up the time in the air." Monique moved to seat 1A. It was a suite, the flagship product of Horizon Air's international fleet. Sliding doors, lie-flat capability, and a large entertainment screen. She stowed her battered leather bag in the overhead bin herself, waving off a flight attendant who rushed to help. "I've got it," Monique said softly. "You have a full cabin to prep. Go ahead." She sat down. Across the aisle in 1D was the British businessman who had stood up for her. He was settling in, adjusting his cufflinks. He looked at her, his eyebrows raised in a mixture of curiosity and respect. "I must say," he said, leaning across the aisle, his voice lowered to a conspiratorial whisper. "I've been flying across the Atlantic for 30 years. I've seen drunks, I've seen fights, and I've seen celebrities throw tantrums. But I have never seen anyone dismantle a captain with a single sentence like that. CEO. That was a bluff, surely." Monique buckled her seatbelt. She looked at the man. He was wearing a bespoke suit, likely Savile Row. He looked like old money. "It wasn't a bluff, Mr. Thornberry, Arthur Thornberry." He extended a hand. "Monique Sterling." She shook it. "And no, Arthur. It wasn't a bluff. I took over the company on Tuesday." Arthur's eyes widened. He let out a low whistle. "Well then, remind me to sell my shares in British Airways and buy Horizon. If the new management handles the balance sheet the way you handle bullies, the stock is going to triple." The plane shuddered as the engine spooled up. The main cabin door was closed. The fasten seatbelt sign chimed with a heavy, authoritative ping. Up in the cockpit, the mood was funereal. Captain Anderson sat in the left seat, staring blankly at the runway lights of JFK. His hands were gripping the yoke so hard his knuckles were white. He was on autopilot, not the plane, but his brain. He was going through the motions of the checklist, but his mind was racing through a catalogue of disasters. Did she really own the airline? Maybe she was just a new VP. No, Paul Henderson had called her Ms. Sterling. The memo. The goddamned memo. "Captain?" Anderson snapped his head to the right. First Officer Kevin Miller was looking at him with wide, fearful eyes. "Tower cleared us for takeoff 3 times, sir. They're asking if we have a problem." Anderson blinked. He hadn't heard a thing. He shook his head, trying to clear the fog. No problem. Let's go." Toga. Takeoff thrust. He pushed the throttles forward. The GE-90 engines roared, pinning them back in their seats. The Boeing 777 lumbered down the runway, picking up speed. V1. Rotate. As the nose lifted and the ground fell away, Anderson felt a sick sensation in his gut that had nothing to do with gravity. He was flying the plane, yes, but for the first time in 20 years, he wasn't in control. He had the boss sitting 20 feet behind him, and he had just treated her like a criminal. He needed a plan. He had 6 hours and 40 minutes to London. That was 6 hours to save his career. 2 hours into the flight, the cabin was dark. Most passengers in first class were asleep or watching movies. The dinner service had been cleared away. Monique was awake. She had her laptop open, the blue light illuminating her face. She wasn't watching a movie. She was reading the in-flight service reports from the last 6 months. She was cross-referencing them with crew schedules. She noticed a pattern. Whenever Captain Anderson was flying, the crew satisfaction scores plummeted. Complaints about hostile work environment and lack of cockpit communication were buried in the HR files, marked as resolved personality conflict. Anderson wasn't just a racist gatekeeper, he was a toxic manager who had been protected by an old boys club culture for decades. Monique closed her laptop and stretched. She needed to use the restroom. She stood up and walked toward the front galley. As she pulled the curtain aside, she found Eleanor, the purser, sitting on a jump seat, her head in her hands. She was crying, quietly, so as not to wake the passengers, but her shoulders were shaking. Another flight attendant, a young man named David, was awkwardly patting her shoulder. Monique stopped. "Elena!" Elena jumped up, wiping her eyes frantically. "Miss Sterling, I'm so sorry. I didn't see you coming. Is there something I can get you? A water? Some tea?" "Sit down," Monique said gently. She didn't use her CEO voice. She used the voice of a woman who had raised 3 younger brothers. "What's wrong?" Elena looked at David, then at the floor. "It's nothing, Mom. Just long day." "It's not nothing," Monique said. She leaned against the galley counter. "I'm not here to reprimand you. I'm here to listen." "Why were you crying?" David spoke up, his voice tight with anger. "It's the captain, Mom. He just called down on the interphone." "And?" Monique prompted. "He yelled at Elena because his coffee wasn't hot enough," David said, his fists clenching. He told her she was useless, and that if she didn't fix it, he'd write her up for insubordination. He said she was lucky to have a job given how slow she is. Monique's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the galley seemed to drop 10 degrees. "He said that? Over the interphone?" "Yes, Ma'am. Everyone in the galley heard it." Monique nodded slowly. "Elena, how long have you flown with Captain Anderson?" 3 years, off and on, Elena whispered. "He's always like this. He screams at us if the turbulence is bad, as if we control the weather. He makes comments about our weight. He once made a rookie stewardess cry because she forgot his favorite brand of sparkling water. "Why hasn't this been reported?" Monique asked, though she already knew the answer. "We report it," David insisted. "I've filed 3 reports. They just disappear. He's a Czech airman. He's friends with the chief pilot. If you go against Anderson, you get put on the worst rotations. You get red eyes for 6 months straight. It's not worth it." Monique looked at the coffee pot. It was brewing. "Is that his fresh pot?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am," Elena sniffled. "I was just about to take it up." "Don't bother," Monique said. She reached for the pot. "I'll take it." Elena's eyes widened in horror. "Oh no, Miss Sterling, you can't. You're the CEO, you can't serve coffee. And he's in a foul mood. I don't want him to be rude to you again." "He won't be rude to me," Monique said, pouring the steaming black liquid into a ceramic mug. She placed the mug on a silver tray. She added a single packet of sugar and a napkin. "Because he knows I hold the pen that signs his pension checks." She picked up the tray. "Open the cockpit door, please, David." David hesitated, then punched the code into the keypad. The heavy reinforced door buzzed. Monique stepped into the small vestibule between the galley and the flight deck. She knocked on the inner door. "Come in!" Anderson's voice barked from inside. "And this better be hot this time, or so help me God." Monique opened the door. The cockpit was dark, lit only by the mesmerizing array of screens and dials. Anderson was turned halfway around in his seat, ready to berate the flight attendant. When he saw Monique standing there, holding a silver tray, his mouth fell open. He looked like he had seen a ghost. Ms. Sterling." "Your coffee, Captain," Monique said calmly. She stepped into the flight deck. The space was cramped. She placed the tray on the center console with delicate precision. I didn't expect..." Anderson stammered. He looked at Kevin, the first officer, who was staring at his instruments, desperately pretending he wasn't there. "You didn't expect the CEO to bring you coffee?" Monique asked. She stood in the center of the cockpit, leaning slightly against the jump seat. "At Amazon, I used to work the warehouse floor once a month during the Christmas rush. I believe you can't lead people if you don't know what they do, just like you can't command respect if you don't give it." Anderson swallowed hard. He reached for the coffee, his hand trembling slightly. "Ms. Sterling, look, about earlier. The gate. I want to apologize. I was stressed. We've been under a lot of pressure lately with the schedule changes. I didn't mean to be disrespectful." "You weren't just disrespectful to me, Mark," Monique said, using his first name. "It was a power move. It stripped him of his title. You were disrespectful to my customer, and just now you were abusive to my staff." Anderson stiffened. I just asked for hot coffee. Elena is a human being," Monique cut him off, her voice low and dangerous in the small space. "She is a mother of 2. She has a master's degree in hospitality management, and she is terrified of you. That ends today." "I run a tight ship," Anderson said defensively, trying to regain some ground. "Discipline is important in aviation. If they can't handle a little yelling, they shouldn't be here. Safety is about precision." "Safety is about communication," Monique corrected him. "And right now, your first officer is so scared of you that if you made a mistake on the landing approach, I bet he wouldn't correct you. Would you, Kevin?" She turned to the first officer. Kevin jumped. He looked at Monique, then at Anderson. The fear was palpable. "Kevin," Monique said softly, "I'm asking you a direct question. If Captain Anderson came in too low on the glide slope, would you feel comfortable taking controls from him?" Kevin opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked down at his lap. I would try to suggest. Exactly, Monique said. She turned back to Anderson. That is a safety risk. You have created a cockpit culture where your ego is more important than the lives of the 300 people back there. That is not a tight ship, Mark. That is a ticking time bomb. She straightened up. Enjoy your coffee. It's the last one you'll be drinking in this seat. She turned to leave. Wait, Anderson called out, panic rising in his voice. You can't just threaten me like that. I have a union. I have rights. You can't fire me for following gate procedure. Monique paused at the door. She looked back, her face illuminated by the eerie green glow of the radar screen. I'm not firing you for the gate procedure, Mark, and I'm not firing you for the coffee. Then what? You'll see when we land, she said. Oh, and by the way, you might want to check the weather in London. It looks like a storm is brewing. She closed the door, leaving Anderson alone with his coffee and a first officer who wouldn't look him in the eye. The rest of the flight was a blur for Captain Anderson. He couldn't focus. He kept checking the flight management computer, recalculating the arrival time. He wanted this flight to last forever, because he knew that the moment the wheels touched the tarmac, his reality was going to shatter. He tried to engage Kevin in conversation, to build an alliance. She's crazy, right? Power trip. New boss trying to make a name for herself. The union will eat her alive. Kevin didn't respond. He just kept his headset on, listening to air traffic control, effectively freezing Anderson out. Meanwhile, back in the cabin, Monique wasn't sleeping. She had connected to the in-flight Wi-Fi. What she saw on her phone made her eyebrows rise. Someone at the gate in JFK, likely one of the teenagers she had seen filming, had uploaded the video to TikTok. It had been captioned, Karen Pilot tries to kick off black woman, finds out she's the owner. Chashyan Karma, na Horizon Air, jot boss moves. The video had 4.2 million views. It had been posted 4 hours ago. Monique scrolled through the comments. OMG the way he pointed his finger, fire him. Horizon Air? I'm cancelling my tickets RN, unless they do something. That's Monique Sterling. She's a legend in the logistics world. He messed with the wrong one. Then she saw the news headlines. CNN, BBC, TMZ. Viral video. Horizon Air CEO racially profiled by her own captain. Horizon Air stock dips 2% amidst PR nightmare. David Thorne, the VP of Operations, had sent her 12 emails. Monique, press is camping out at Heathrow. PR team has a statement drafted. Do you want to review? Union rep is calling me. They saw the video. Even they are backing off. They say Anderson is on his own. Monique typed a quick reply. Hold the statement. I will address the press personally upon arrival. Ensure airport security is ready to escort the captain. Not to protect him from the press, but to ensure he doesn't try to hide. She put her phone down and looked out the window. The sun was rising over the horizon, painting the clouds in hues of violet and gold. It was a beautiful day for a reckoning. Ladies and gentlemen, Anderson's voice crackled over the PA system. It sounded strained, higher pitched than usual. We are beginning our initial descent into London Heathrow. Weather is, rainy. 12 degrees Celsius. Cabin crew, prepare for landing. There was no thanks for flying with us. No charm, just the voice of a man who wanted to go home. The landing was rough. Anderson slammed the 777 onto the runway with a thud that rattled the overhead bins. It wasn't dangerous, but it was amateurish. It was a landing made by a man whose hands were shaking. As they taxied to the gate, the usual chime of seatbelts unbuckling was replaced by a buzz of activity. Passengers were turning on their phones. Oh my God, the man in seat 2F said loudly. Look at this video. It's us. It's the captain. What? His wife asked. It's trending on Twitter. Look, that's the guy who blocked the lady." Heads turned. People started whispering, pointing at the cockpit door. The businessman, Arthur Thornberry, looked at Monique and gave her a grim nod. "It seems the court of public opinion has already reached a verdict, Ms. Sterling." "The court of public opinion is fast," Monique said, gathering her bag, "but I prefer due process, and he's about to get it." The plane pulled into the gate. The engines spooled down. The seatbelt sign turned off. Monique stood up. She didn't wait for the bridge to connect. She walked to the front of the cabin, standing right by the cockpit door. She waited. The door opened. Anderson stepped out, his hat pulled low, his flight bag over his shoulder. He looked like he was trying to sneak out before the passengers disembarked. He almost ran into Monique. "Going somewhere, Captain?" she asked. I have to do the post-flight walk-around," he mumbled, trying to squeeze past her. "The ground crew will handle it," Monique said. "You and I have a welcoming committee." She gestured to the open cabin door. The jet bridge was connected. Standing at the end of the tunnel, visible through the glass doors of the terminal, was a sea of flashing cameras. Anderson paled. "The press? For me? They want to know why the captain of a flagship carrier thinks he has the right to police the clothing of his passengers," Monique said. "And I think you should tell them." "I can't go out there," Anderson whispered, terror in his eyes. "They'll destroy me." "You destroyed yourself, Mark," Monique said. "I'm just turning on the lights." She turned to the passengers who were now filing out, watching the drama with wide eyes. "After you," she said to Anderson. He didn't move. He looked back at the cockpit, then at the emergency exit, as if considering popping the slide. "Captain Anderson," Monique said, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Walk." He walked. It was a walk of shame that made the one at JFK look like a parade. As he stepped out of the jet bridge and into the terminal, the flashbulbs erupted like a thunderstorm. "Captain Anderson, why did you block her? Is it true you used racial slurs? Captain, are you resigning?" Microphones were shoved in his face. He put his head down, shielding his eyes, pushing through the crowd. He looked small. The arrogance was gone, stripped away by the blinding light of accountability. Monique stepped out a moment later. The questions shifted instantly. "Miss Sterling, Miss Sterling, will you be pressing charges? What is the future of Horizon Air? Was this a publicity stunt?" Monique stopped. She raised a hand. The chaotic sphere of reporters fell silent. She looked calm, regal, and utterly in command. She wasn't wearing a suit. She was still in her hoodie and jeans, and she had never looked more powerful. "I have a brief statement," Monique said. Her voice was steady, projected clearly without a microphone. "Horizon Air is a company built on the idea that the sky belongs to everyone. Today, that promise was broken by one of our own. Captain Anderson's behavior at JFK was a symptom of a culture that I was hired to fix. And I am fixing it." She looked directly into the lens of the nearest camera. "Effective immediately, Captain Mark Anderson is relieved of duty pending a formal investigation. But let me be clear, racism, classism, and bullying have no seat on my planes. If you cannot treat every passenger with dignity, whether they are wearing a tuxedo or a hoodie, you do not fly for Horizon." She paused. "And to the passengers of Flight 492, I apologize for the delay. Everyone on board will receive a full refund and a voucher for future travel. We will be better. I promise you that." She nodded, signaling she was done. As she turned to walk away, flanked by Paul Henderson, who had flown in to meet her, and airport security, she saw Anderson. He was standing near the baggage claim carousel, alone. The press had lost interest in him the moment the powerful woman spoke. He was on his phone, likely shouting at a union rep who wasn't listening. He looked up, and their eyes met across the terminal. There was no smugness in Monique's eyes, only a cold, hard finality. She didn't wave. She just kept walking. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why you never judge a book by its cover, especially when that book signs your paychecks. Captain Anderson learned the hard way that the random woman in the hoodie held more power in her pinky finger than he had in his entire career. He was eventually fired for cause and lost his pension due to gross misconduct. Monique Sterling went on to turn Horizon Air into the top-rated airline for customer service 3 years running. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma and justice served, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a story. What would you have done if you were Monique? Let me know in the comments below. See you in the next video.